Hello. If this video has come across your feed, then this has materialized right when you needed it to. Now, this is part 2 to the first video of the Spirited Away analysis and spiritual breakdown. If you haven't seen that part, it's not necessary, but it would probably make a lot more sense if you went back and watched that first. But with that being said, again, tell us your good news for the week in the comment section, and we'll just get started in this one. My trans identity is but one aspect of me, and that old name I used to have isn't me anymore, and it's not like I changed as a person on the outside. It's just that I've grown and I wanted a name that felt like it could house me better. I've expanded who I am, and that name no longer fits. It's like a snake shedding skin in order to grow bigger. That's what we all should aim for, to grow better and better in all the ways possible. The next line in that same scene, Haku tells her this: if you completely forget, you'll never find your way home. That's spiritual death in a way, where if you don't believe in anything, all this information can only get you so far. And that's not to knock any atheists, because that's not wrong. There's no wrong or right to belief. What makes it wrong is when you use your personal beliefs and try to shape other people's realities with it. That's like you going up to somebody who's making a beautiful sculpture and giving unfettered advice, and even pushing them out of their seat and adding your own bits of clay, ruining their sculpture. That reminds me of the scripture, "Ask and ye shall receive." Granted, I'm not religious and I'm not Christian, but I keep it very vague on purpose, because for me, spirituality ties in with all of the things of the world. All religions are tools, and all tools are pieces of information. And when Haku says that he's tried everything to remember his own name, that just means that he's still lost and he hasn't found the right tool yet, but that he knows that there's something else that's bigger out there. Just like a lot of people feel when they're on their spiritual journey. They're aware that there's something else out there because they've had all of these experiences that they can't explain, and they continue onward. But sometimes nothing happens like that again, and by that time, a lot of people can get frustrated and give up. But Haku hasn't. He's still searching to know who he is at his core. Haku is just showing Chihiro perseverance and seeing the world in a positive light, which I think is why he has green eyes, because he sees the potential in the world. He sees how it needs healing. He sees past what has been given to him. It reminds me of the scene from Lion King 1.5 where Rafiki tells Timon to look beyond what he sees. You kind of have to have the eye for it, but you have to start somewhere. Spirit wanted me to mention his dragon form here in this specific spot, because the dragon is an archetype of unrelenting force within us to keep going, and that all we need to do is tap into our inner ferocity and do what we think is impossible, to fly above it and see a higher perspective. And when we find that starting point, like I mentioned before, you have to keep that ferocity going for as long as you can possibly do it. You have to keep finding those puzzle pieces, those pieces of the kaleidoscope, so that you can expand your vision, but you can't just add them. You have to implement them in your life. You have to download the data. You can't just sit there and be like, okay, cool, that was some neat information. You have to take that data and reprogram yourself, which, side note, it's kind of like if you've seen the Digimon Frontier at all, the 4th season, that's my favorite one. And the other ones I'm like, whatever, they're cool. But I love season 4, specifically because of how they go about saving the digital world. I find that life is very much like that in a way, but that's beside the point. One way to do this, to integrate that data, is shown when Haku offers her food. It's both grounding and her integrating and replenishing herself spiritually, because high amounts of distress like crying or negative emotions can deplete us. And so when we eat something, it can give us endorphins. It can give us energy. It can help us in general to stay alive. That's where some eating disorders come from, I think, because we rely too much on food being something that gives us enough of an endorphin high that we rely on that alone for comfort, because we feel like we have no other option. I think that is the root cause of obesity as well, and this is just my opinion. I don't want to start any fights in the comments or anything, and even then I don't really like the idea of calling it obesity. It's just one way it manifests physically of not feeling safe. That's my opinion, but I'm willing to have a conversation obviously on any of what I've been talking about in these past 2 videos. The way that she eats it at first is slow and intentional. That's the way that we need to process and integrate things. We need to take the time to actually sit with it and feel everything that's coming with that information. That's the secret. You can't just eat through integration quickly, because it's like when you download new software onto your computer, you have to let it do it at its own speed. Otherwise, it doesn't work or it crashes the computer. The equivalent of this is only downloading half of the information and not getting the full lesson from the download and only implementing half the code. Then the next part of the scene in the background with the flowers again, instead of it just being pink, there's some purple ones throughout. So she's ascending, she's learned and integrated the lesson. She's mastering that information. Now, this scene made me tear up too while watching it. She's crying as she's eating the food Haku gave her, and it's like she's finally realizing that the world as it is suffering because they can't see. They refuse to see it. They refuse to grow. The world is so dense, and it's compounding with her feelings of being overwhelmed and integrating a new lesson, which is this: sometimes life is hard, and you lose people that you thought you'd have forever. They didn't die, obviously. They just turned into pigs, but it's just that you don't know them anymore. They changed, or you changed so much that the people that you once valued in your life have no place in your life anymore. They quite literally don't understand you anymore. It's not an anxious teen thing, although that's said a lot as a teen, but it's the truth when they aren't feeling understood. And it's not that they aren't actually worth something, it's just that to you, their purpose in your life has run its course. After all of that, she finds out that Haku is a dragon, and it shows that all she can see is the white part of his dragon self. White dragons can symbolize, but are not limited to, purity, wisdom, and divine power, particularly in Asian cultures, but can also represent death and rebirth, or even a symbol of the Anglo-Saxons. In some contexts, like in China, white dragons can be an omen of death, while in Welsh folklore, the Anglo-Saxon white dragon represented resilience and pride, according to Google. I wanted to get a definition that encompassed as many traditions as possible, but it's impossible to list them all here without derailing the entire essay. If you feel called to, look up the meaning of white dragons and read up on them in your culture or what resonates with you the most, especially in spiritual contexts if you feel called to. But we're gonna move on. When Chihiro goes back in to go back to sleep, they show No Face walking over the rest of the bridge following her. And so it's still that temptation of greed and survival following her, because it's always there. You can always fall back to old patterns. Then when she doesn't even make it all the way back to her sleeping quarters, she falls asleep in Kamaji's boiler room. When he wakes up and he sees her, he seems proud of her because he goes to tuck her in, making sure she gets enough rest, protecting her from falling back into old habits, like burnout and overworking yourself. So when people talk about workaholics, it's like that person's personal way that they cope in a negative way, because when we are forced to overwork, we don't have the time to think. And when we don't have the time to think, we can't remember. And when we can't remember, we stagnate or fall back into these old habits or get worse. That can manifest in ailments and disease. It's literally in the word, dis-ease. That doesn't mean that all problems can be fixed by singing Kumbaya around a campfire. But it may fix a lot of issues in our lives if we simply treat ourselves and others with kindness first. Sleep is never a waste of time. It's just another way to integrate things, because when you're resting, you're allowing your mind to start healing. You allow it to slow down. Dreams are a way that your mind integrates things on a subconscious level. They might not make sense if you remember them, but for the mind, it does. You can keep a dream journal to analyze those dreams later. You can meditate on them. You can look up dreams other people have had, and you can analyze what you may have been thinking about the day before. It's important to start there and through shadow work, so that you can uncover subconscious beliefs you may have been carrying that came from other people or from trauma. That way you unburden yourself from them so that you can move to higher realms later. Moving on to the next part, the scene is where she's cleaning the floors at night. The other girls running while cleaning the floor next to her are visual representations of your spirit team doing the work to create your foundation. They're cleaning it up so that you can build on it as you continue forward on your spiritual journey. The rain cleanses the outer world naturally. So while Chihiro looks like she's having a hard time, she's just representing the 3D side of things, the physical. It works a lot slower than in the spirit. When we are trying to make changes, it happens subconsciously first, then consciously, then in the mind, your thoughts, and actively implementing those changes, then in the body, where your body reacts to those changes, such as feeling ascension symptoms, and then in the physical, where they finally show up. There are all different types of ways that we can clean our foundation or our spiritual hygiene in general. That can be through burning incense, sage, Palo Santo, actual cleaning, etc. We have to take care of our bodies, our minds, and our spirit. All three things that we need to take care of can be overwhelming at first, especially when everything feels rigged against doing those things, like trying to find time to meditate when you just got off a 12-hour shift, or when you want to watch a movie but you haven't done your affirmations yet. Whatever the scenario, there are too many distractions out there that keep you from healing, but you must make the time to do them, one tiny step at a time. The way that Chihiro leaves the door open for No Face to come in is symbolic of imperfection, because while we do everything we can to be spiritually clean in all aspects like we just listed before, we're still imperfect beings, and so there's going to be room for error. There's going to be instances where you're going to make mistakes, myself included, and not interpret your discernment correctly, which is why No Face gets in the first place. When Chihiro and Lin are assigned to the big tub, people make fun of them for it, but Chihiro doesn't complain. She just prepares, and I think there's a lot of symbolism in the fact that she's getting the big tub to clean. It's symbolically showing that you have to take responsibility for your emotions. You have to take responsibility for your own emotional cleanliness. You have to hold your own accountability and integrity for your actions too. Like when people are laughing, it's because they think it's funny that you feel that accountability, integrity, and responsibility are important. It's like the outside voice is telling you, oh, you're too sensitive, or oh, you're too much. But they don't see the value in that. That's why they laugh, because they don't understand. They don't see the value in it. It reminds me of my own journey where my whole life I've avoided personal, bigger questions. I've avoided cleaning up my own emotions for a long time because it was too painful. And by the time I actually got around to doing it, like Lynn says, the sludge is so caked on it'll take days to scrub off. That's kind of how it felt. It was a whole process that I had to go through and do healing work on the past. I had to pull the lessons that I could and integrate them the best way I knew how. I had to realize that it was trying to teach me something here. Not that everything has a lesson, because free will can still get in the way sometimes, especially when it comes to other people's actions, but most of the time it does. It's like I had to get rid of all of the sludge blocking my emotions from feeling again. I hadn't cried for years, and yet I hadn't got angry either. I was numb except for love. I always felt love. All of the negative beliefs, all of the, I'll call them infected wounds, I suppose, that I had never healed fully, that I've been trying to patch up with what I had, which wasn't enough, but it kept the infection at bay for the most part, but it hadn't fully allowed it to be cleaned and healed either. So upon doing shadow work and regulating my emotions and realizing that they are basically just tools and gauges, I was able to literally take control of my life. It's like I stepped into the cockpit of a spaceship or an airplane and learned all of the mechanics so that I can actually power it up and go wherever I wanted to go. As they cleaned the big tub, when Lin told Chihiro to get an herbal salt token for the bath, it's symbolic of finding something massive that forces growth quickly in your emotions. It's another flow state almost, but instead of water alone, you're using earth, aka salt. So it grounds you while allowing you to feel emotions through it. It's like an initiation through hardship, an overflow of emotion. When you finally break down a wall around your heart, you revive the hardness of it. You start to make it soft again. You have little moments of tears and just pure joy, like you're needing a good cry, one that cleanses you of those emotions. That's what happens when you start to heal. You start to feel again. You start to feel safe enough to heal and be soft again. But in addition to that, sometimes tests happen after that, where someone or something comes in and tests us. For example, the next scene when it cuts to Yubaba looking out the window, she says that something's coming, but she doesn't know what it is. That's intuition sensing something's coming. It's not fear, because fear would tell you something is coming and manifest in the form of anxiety or an anxiety attack, depending on your level of healing. I would gander. So she goes to look outside and says that someone is sleeking around in the rain. I find it interesting that they used the word sleeking in the script. S-L-E-E-K-I-N-G. Because when I looked it up, it meant suggests deceit and moral corruption behind an outward appearance of prosperity, and is a reminder to focus on inner righteousness rather than superficial well-being. So it's saying someone who looks like they know a lot, or that they may have achieved a lot but haven't done the inner work. They lack depth. They very well may have achieved success on the outside of things, but when it's not in conjunction with inner prosperity and healing, it can be used in negative ways against others, because a lot of the times for people people to get to high positions, at least nowadays, they have to step on other people to get there. The heart is not balanced, and so it's just consumption. It's just feeding the ego, which is why I think people in those high positions or billionaires tend to change. They tend to lose sight. They forget what is really worth it in the end, thereby then creating imbalance in a big way in the physical for everyone else as well. Speaking of cleanliness and bathhouses, as a kid, I've loved baths and still do, and I think a lot of people can agree that baths are something that are more enjoyable than showers. To me, showers are just more efficient baths, but it doesn't allow you to sit and marinate on things in your mind in a relaxing way. It doesn't allow you to think. It's another way that we've sort of streamlined inner well-being to the point where it doesn't do that anymore. Of course, that's just my personal take. The stink spirit that's walking through the streets in the rain in the next scene shows how people don't want to serve them just because of what they look like or have been through. It shows that even people who seem like they don't want or need cleansing can benefit from even just one moment of integration. You just have to give them a chance. With boundaries, of course. It's never someone else's job to help someone, but if they ask for help, you can try. Let's say someone is that stink spirit, and they are coming to the bathhouse for cleansing. That's integration. It's acting like a cauterization. You're taking negative things and turning them into positives because you're learning from it. You're using information to make informed decisions about what to do next to improve yourself. You're letting yourself feel the emotions, which is scientifically proven to improve your mental state if you let yourself cry, if you let yourself feel emotion. Same thing can happen if you bottle them up. It can manifest in lowered immune systems, heart issues, memory impairment, emotional numbness, chronic pain and illness, and many other things. Your empathy, your emotions are the key to everything. But again, this is only one side of the equation. Like I said, you have to implement these things on all fronts, mind, body, and spirit. It reminds me of the news where people have been saying that, quote, empathy is a sin, unquote. Why do you think they would say that? So they can continue doing what they're doing with zero remorse when it comes to political things, but I digress. And I hope you get the picture. Now, when Chihiro goes to get the herbal salt token, she's denied it. And then No Face shows up next to the frogman that gives out the tokens. So No Face gets the token for her, and she just thanks them both. No Face was trying to help her so that they could gain her trust. If we just let something fester and start to grow, that can become a problem later. It's yet again another issue of discernment, but it's also another lesson on persistence and demanding better of yourself and others in a way that others can understand. So if it's someone that won't understand anything but principled anger, that's what you need to do. If it's somebody else who responds better and you treat them with kindness, that's what you need to do. You have to be discerning of what kind of energy that person is needing. The next part where Chihiro comes back with the why did I almost say stolen token? Well, I guess it is. The next part where Chihiro comes back with the token that she needs, but better, Lin says, wow, Sen, you got a really good one. That's the blessing that you get. When you have good discernment, you get really good rewards, and oftentimes it's better than what you asked for. While the bath is filling up, No Face comes in with a bunch of tokens for her to use because he's trying to tempt her with greed, stealing, and power. Whatever you want to use to label that character as far as a negative emotion or action. But in this case, when you have tokens, you have the power to tell people what you need in this universe as far as the baths go. So she knows that they are trying to give her all of those tokens, but she says no and says, I don't need any more. That's like knowing what you need and only taking what you need. Granted, if you want something, that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing that you go for it, but when it goes into excess, that's when it becomes dangerous. Just like what happened earlier when No Face gave her the one token. It works, but now she's putting a boundary up for herself and saying, no, I don't need any more than that. That's it. And then when No Face realizes he can't get to her that way, they just disappear because she basically refused to give in to an old pattern of scarcity, lying, or what have you. Although obviously she hasn't lied yet in this movie at all, but I'm just saying that that's one pattern that people can fall back into. And after she refuses, she gets all of the tokens anyway. Then the bath started to overflow. That shows that when you don't take the easiest offer that seems like it will give you a lot, but in the long run it won't, something better will come back to you because you knew your worth. You didn't settle. Then when the stink spirit comes in, the animation style shows when something is really unnerving or disgusting, that her hair poofs up or a chill runs up her body. Even her clothes puff up a little bit. I always found that funny, but it shows when something is freaking you out or making your hair stand on end. It's probably something you should follow and take a look at, of course within reason. That's why they say when something scares you, that means you should do it. Doing something that scares you reminds me of those base jumpers and how they seemingly have no fear of jumping off of high places. Whether that's with a bodysuit and flying like a flying squirrel off the highest mountain.
That's looking pretty good. Should be a good time. Oh my good gosh. Oh my good gosh.
Or jumping off the highest building in a city and parachuting down. They're just doing the physical version of taking a leap of faith. And so that's why a lot of people find it scary, in my opinion. They are facing a 3D equivalent of that. They are leaping with the faith that everything will be okay. With that in mind, the next scene shows that same leap of faith. The fact that she does what she needs to do, no matter how scared or grossed out she is, because she's already learned at the beginning of the movie to move through fear. She realizes the worth in the stink spirit and doesn't hesitate to help them. And when she refills the bath, she gets stuck. But the spirit helps her and shows her the thorn, as she called it, in its side. It's symbolic of finding the root cause of all the pain and helping them get rid of it by holding space for them. But in this case, she's literally pulling out what's hurting the river spirit beneath it all, which is pollution and trash. This scene almost made me tear up because it's symbolic of times where we all work together to find the root cause of why there's so much corruption, pollution, and all of this shit in the world.
Shit! Language!
Excuse my language. We can all start doing our part in fixing the problem and finding freedom collectively, letting life flow rather than letting it stagnate, because that's how the river spirit got contaminated in the first place, and that it only takes one person with a big enough heart to get it flowing again. It was Chihiro's test, like I said before, because she integrated her lessons, because Yubaba assigned her and Lin to that bath.
I don't want a bath.
What? Queen's English girl. Bath.
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 Bath. Not bath. You're not a wild animal.
And Lin acted as one of Chihiro's guides. So when she found it was an old river spirit and it said, "Well done," to her, it was like a test to open the floodgates of her own flow, her own spirit, her own power, clearing out all of the emotional gunk and things that were not hers to carry, so that she could make room for all of the good that could come into her life. When the pollution was cleared and the water started to show what was in the dirt, abundance made itself known. By healing and clearing out old energy and emotional gunk, abundance in all its forms comes rushing in. Gold started to show in the dirt and water. You never know when a question or circumstance will lead to a blessing in disguise once you do the internal work. That mirrors my own journey, because I've gotten to the point where I have cleared most, if not all, of the sludge from what I can right now, to the point where abundance can finally come in. Even though I'm still waiting on that, I persevere, just like Chihiro. Also, I wanted to mention that this is the second time that we see a white dragon-like figure. When the river spirit leaves, it represents and reminds you of the reasons this is important work, the yin and yang of it all. She receives a gift from that spirit as well, a physical gift in the form of a bitter dumpling. It's used in this film as a healing medicine, as we will talk about later. Chihiro makes Yubaba so happy, and Yubaba ends up telling everyone around her that everyone should learn from Sen. It just goes to show that when you care about someone, no matter what, when they're asking for help, you help them. You never know what good can come out of it for either of you. Chihiro values her accomplishments more than outside approval at this point in the film, because while outside approval feels good and it's still valid, she knows what it feels like to help someone and the reward that can come from that. Now, the next scene where the frog person comes in looking for extra gold in the middle of the night, in the big tub room, No Face is in that bath now and is attempting to tempt the frog with gold. It's like trying to distract someone's persistence with immediate reward. This person was looking for a quick fix to something rather than doing the work, and because they decided not to do the work, they may have found an easier way, but it's dangerous because when you get greedy, you tend to cut corners, and then you start not valuing other people, and then you start realizing that if you just stop caring, it makes it a lot easier to gain more money. That's just one example of how that manifests. Both ways are easy, but one gives you the easy way without any work, and then you pay for it later, kind of like a credit card.
What did he say?
Hey!
Credit limit on your card was reached.
And then the other gives it to you after doing all of the work, but the reward afterward outweighs what you would have gotten if you didn't.
It's just money. It's made up.
And the other frog person that walks in on this recognizes the voice coming from No Face. He realizes that this is a distorted version of that person, and that person is now making everyone else get up and do extra work when they don't have to. That's the part where it starts to become unbalanced. When one person decides to follow greed and quick fixes to their problems, it starts to affect others. For example, when someone in society decides to make a business for themselves, but then they start cutting corners, and then they start demanding certain things from suppliers, making prices go super low, and then basically taking over the market because no one else can compete with those prices, which apparently has happened recently with Walmart, to the point that now, in trying to correct it, leaves certain places without a grocery store nearby because they've driven everyone else out of the market, which just drives my point home that differences are key and the challenge needs to be there. Then the next scene where Chihiro has a dream about trying to give the gift from the river spirit to her parents in the pig pen, she gets overwhelmed and isn't sure which ones are her parents. And then she wakes back up in her sleeping quarters. She was trying to integrate all that she's learned so that she can move on to the next step, which is discerning who her parents are and figuring out what to do with the tool/medicine that she was given. When it cuts to everyone working in the daytime for No Face, it just shows how chaotic it can be when one person is imbalanced. It causes everyone else to be imbalanced. And when she doesn't go down to help with No Face, she goes looking for Haku instead. She is showing that she no longer resonates with material things, or the interest or approval of others. She's becoming more interested in people. The next scene, when she gets back to her sleeping quarters, where Haku is flying and being attacked by these paper creatures in his dragon form, the shape of these creatures looks like dragonflies to me. Dragonflies symbolize transformation, change, and spiritual growth, among other things. They find balance and adapt to new situations like Chihiro's been doing, and it's connecting with one's deeper self. So with Haku, he's actively fighting against something like that because sometimes it can be painful to adapt or find balance. It reminds me of how I've basically done that my whole life without realizing it. I've been like Haku. A lot of what I've been through was and is painful, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even identity-wise. There's been so much that honestly, I'm sitting here tearing up when I was writing it, watching the scene, because I'm like, how the fuck did I get through that?
Language!
I remember how I felt, but it felt impossible in the moment to get past those things. It felt like nothing would ever change. But in the end, I pushed past it anyway, because why should I sit there and deal with that pain? Why keep myself in that painful state? If you have the right people and support in your life, they'll help you face your fears and get through whatever it is that you're going through. Chihiro helped him with that by getting him to fly into her room and started trying to close the doors so that those creatures couldn't come after him. When you find the right people, you resonate with them. You find connection. When Chihiro goes to find him at the top of the building in the next scene because he's going to bleed out, that one paper dragonfly that's left behind follows her and attaches itself to her shoulder, guiding her so that connection with someone guides you to them. Because you connect with them, you see all of them. When you see all of someone, you know how to help them. The next part, where one of the frogmen is dancing with fans and guiding No Face up the stairs. He's saying, "Welcome the rich man. He's hard for you to miss. His butt keeps getting bigger." So there's plenty there to kiss. Everyone is placing value on No Face because they've all become imbalanced. They're looking for outside validation and are placing a lot of value on his money, which is why these people that play on your fears and get you to give them your money are rich, because we've created a society based on fear. Anything created in fear is never going to help the collective. That's why jobs are a thing. We've gotten to the point where we're all just taking what we can get rather than what we need and deserve. We all deserve to be paid our fair share so that we can actually live life. It's cheaper to pay for someone to have their earned income than withhold it, because the less people that are taking care of themselves, the more destruction happens and the more there is for that person at the top. Because this person is greedy, it doesn't matter to them, and they place value over money rather than people, like I said, which then in turn makes it harder to live for everyone else. You're literally choosing the harder way to live because you want money, and you don't want anybody else to have more than you. Which is why No Face gets upset when Chihiro declines again to take anything more from him. She can't be manipulated. After giving No Face one half of the bitter dumpling, she runs and he can't catch up. It just shows that when you put in the work and someone tries to attack you, when they aren't on your same level, they can't actually get to you anymore, and it forces them to face the truth, aka the bitter dumpling, and shows them all the consumption they've been dealing with, all that stuff they've been using to deal with life instead of actually giving your soul sustenance. After running from No Face's rampage, when she has to run across the rusty pipe, she does so without even hesitating. It's a notable difference from the beginning when she was afraid to throw that lump of coal into the fire. Every time fear comes up for her, the less time it takes for her to actually jump into it, which is what happens when we start facing our fears on any level. The more we face our fears and learn about the world around us, the less scary it is, the less we are hesitant to jump into action. When Chihiro finally finds a way in to where Haku landed at the top of the building and finds herself in the baby's room, there's a pterodactyl hung on the ceiling. I found it strange that there was a dinosaur in the story at all, since this is a spiritual movie as far as like the story itself, but when I looked it up, it means freedom, ancient wisdom, transcendence, visionary thinking, adaptability, independent leadership, resilience, stuff like that, and even embracing your uniqueness, apparently. I find it fascinating because this dinosaur is yet again connecting to my own journey right now. It's like I found a new way of living, and it's up to everyone else to listen and implement it, because all I can do is tell you about it. I'm not trying to be full of myself either. This is just stuff that I feel like people should know. I never want this to seem like I'm better than anyone else, because the truth of the matter is that I'm not, and never will be, better than anybody else. I keep pulling tarot cards for myself, leading me to think that this may all lead to some big thing in the world, like giving birth to something new. It just feels important enough that people need to know. I just feel like this will change everything for a lot of people, which I've been hearing in my own tarot readings and in other readings I've come across and resonated with, and I've been trying to stay away from that thinking because I don't want to ever come across as having some sort of complex or something that says I need to save the world, and that's not at all what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to show people something they may not have thought about and how it helped me. I just feel compelled to share it. That's the difference. But moving on once again, back to sharing the messages. The part where Chihiro gets caught by the giant baby, it's almost like testing her fear again, but also her priorities, because it's not necessarily her main concern as far as what this baby represents in this moment, which is embodying being distracted. She still leaves because she feels safe in herself. She knows her priority is to help Haku, to have that selfless love. She is being tested again to slip back into comfort and safety, rather than risk everything for someone else. And she passes that test by showing the baby the germs on her hand. The germs.
Careful. I'm contagious.
Ooh, cooties. Just kidding, no. I might actually keep that in there. That's how it feels sometimes when someone freaks out about change or being faced with something so real it scares them. So when the baby starts crying, Chihiro removes herself from the situation, running to Haku on the carpet where Yubaba's henchmen are moving to push him down the chute in the floor. Before that can happen, Zeniba comes out of hiding from the paper dragonfly and turns the baby into a mouse, saying the body matches the brain. The entitled nature is really just fear masked as anger. When Zeniba changes them into a mouse, it's that small, timid nature that is at the root of it. The fear and the anxiety at the base of it all, being afraid of new things. And then when she messes with the crow that has her sister's face, she turns it into a tiny version of what it was supposed to be, which is a crow, but it flies around like a fly. To me, that means that she's turned the crow into what it naturally was without Yubaba's influence. Zeniba removed all of its negative aspects and left what was underneath. And lastly, the green heads get turned into the original form of the baby, which is exactly what they all represent symbolically, because the three heads had nothing going on in their head. They just consume and don't think much. But it's also representing how Yubaba doesn't really value her son because he is coddled with love, which is not a bad thing, but in excess, like she does, she's enabling his behavior. You have to be willing to see who you are now so that you can become what you want and need to be later. When she's talking about how Haku's nothing but a thief, it just goes to show that even when you do see someone's true form, your own issues come to the surface when you're faced with it, like when someone challenges your worldview. It also means that you are seeing the light and dark in someone, the good and the bad, and why they do what they do. When someone shows their true self, it can challenge your own lessons that you've learned. It can uncover jealousy, envy, greed, or even admiration or pride. It will reveal if you've healed from things or not, depending on both of your levels of enlightenment. Then the next scene when Chihiro falls with Haku down the chute and they go into that big area with all of the other spirits that are usually on the outside of town on the other side of the bridge doing all the food, we see that Haku's eyes are pupilless. There is no color there. He's acting purely off of instinct at that point. Pure survival energy. He only has those pupils return when they finally land in the boiler room again. So when she gives Haku the medicine from the river spirit before, he ends up spitting up this little black ball that contains the seal and the slug. It's funny though, because Kamaji's like, get it, get it, get it, when it comes to the little slug skittering around. And I find it funny because when she finally kills it by stomping on it, she has that thing happen with her clothes and her hair where it puffs up a little bit. But it just goes to show that sometimes you have to have a friend help you when you're trying to heal and grow, because they may have insight that you don't, which is medicine. Sometimes the help we need is needed in someone else. We have to find that inner balance, not only for ourselves, but for other people. It's not just about you. We may hold information or a lesson that they need. If she didn't learn and help that river spirit, she wouldn't have gotten the medicine, aka the bitter dumpling, to keep Haku from dying. That little slug was a spiritual parasite, something that was taking a long time to heal, or it had festered for so long that it just kept sucking on the energy in Haku to keep it alive. These can be limiting beliefs or negative habits that we refuse to get rid of, like smoking. Just like myself, I stopped vaping and I still have the tendency to want to go back. So I completely understand if that is your version of a spiritual parasite. At least that's what it can be called, but that's only if you resonate with that. Or any number of things that take the energy out of us in a negative way, or affect us in a negative way. When Chihiro kills it, she also does something else for Haku, but we'll touch on that in a moment. Because she killed that parasite, Kamaji tells her to get rid of the negative energy, and tells her to put her thumb and forefingers together, and then he splits it by chopping it with his hand. It reminds me of that time where I broke this little mirror that's in my room. It scared me so much that I went into the kitchen and threw salt over my shoulder and into the sink just in case. I thought I was going to have like 7 years of bad luck. This scene is the equivalent of that, but that doesn't matter, it's the intention that counts. I forgot to mention the scene where she grabs onto his horns while they're falling down that chute, and she remembers something with him where she was holding onto his horns while in the water. It's symbolic of when we help someone else, that person might hold the key to something in either a past life or a distant memory, but only when we help them heal or just hold space for them, sometimes that will give you answers for the future. While Kamaji is trying to explain Haku's story to her since he's still knocked out, the soot sprites, the baby, and the tiny bird pretended to do what she did and reenacted it. He's learning not to fear germs. It's his first lesson on facing fear, which is reenacting things he's seen. The sprites congratulate him on not being fearful to even pretend to do it. They even pretend to do the finger thing that Chihiro did with Kamaji. That's another reason why stories are important, because like I said, they provide a safe way for us to realize certain scenarios and how that might affect other people in the long run, or ourselves, because it takes seeing yourself in another character to understand why that character resonates with you. And then when you see yourself in one character, you'll see it in another character and then another. It keeps going and going and going until one day you see yourself in all characters, because that's how it's meant to be in real life. You're supposed to see yourself in other people every day. Then I rewound it to actually listen to what Kamaji is actually saying to Chihiro about Haku's story. And what he's saying is that Haku used to be a very powerful spirit and changed there because he lost his home. The river he watched over was built over, and so he couldn't find his way back. But he had already started to forget who he was, and so when Yubaba got a hold of him, it just made it all worse. Speaking of Haku, this is a good time to dissect what his name means. I looked up Haku's full name before he remembers it on what it means, and apparently it means a lot of things in every culture, and coincidentally coincides with everything that he is before remembering his full name. According to Google, again, in Japanese it means white or pure, and is associated with innocence and divinity. In Hawaiian culture, Haku means to compose, to arrange, or leader/master when it comes to creativity and authority. The name also has roots in Finnish culture, where it's related to the verb to seek or to search, but his full name that he's forgotten is this right here on the screen, because I'm not going to say it. I don't want to butcher it, but it means God of the Swift Amber River, or Spirit of the Kohaku River, which was shortened to just Haku by Hubaba, according to a quick internet search. Amber can be classified as gold, like a yellowish-orange gold. That's like deep ascension, which is kind of an oxymoron, but it's an abundance of knowledge, at least in my interpretation of that. The reason being is because gold is another color for ascension. According to Google, gold symbolizes divinity, wisdom, purity, prosperity, and enlightenment, representing the highest spiritual attainment and the incorruptible eternal nature of the divine. But when you look at the meaning of amber, it provides another definition that can coincide with that previous one for gold: warmth, light, and cleansing that connects us to the earth and our highest selves, offering protection, vitality, and good fortune. So when we search for our true selves, or in this case, our true identity, we ascend to our highest self that has our best interest at heart. Amber also symbolizes beauty shaped by time. When we grow up, we shape ourselves into who we are with time, but that can be different for everyone, sort of how amber never comes in the same shape because it's fossilized resin. To me, that means that we're hardwired to be this way, and it just compounds the meaning of a white dragon even more. It's the beauty of the journey that is the most beautiful, in my opinion, because I've found that the anticipation of something can often be greater than the actual reward or consequence itself, no matter which end of the spectrum you're on in regard to ascension. Now, going back to that scene where Haku is resting after Chihiro gets rid of the slug and the seal, Lin comes in and she sees all of the blood and asks, "What the hell is going on?" She sees Chihiro get the very thing that she's always wanted, that was mentioned in the previous scene where she says, "I've got to get out of this place. Someday I'm gonna get on that train," which is the train that tickets Kamaji gives to Chihiro. And then she asks what's going on again, and Kamaji says, "Something you wouldn't recognize. It's called love." Referring to where she leans over Haku and asks how to get to Zeniba's hut. I found that really funny because a lot of people don't understand what real love is. We spend so much time compromising with people. We never learn what it means to actually love someone, whether that is platonic or romantic. And speaking of love, I personally feel like that's where a lot of people get confused when they're in a romantic relationship that is or becomes abusive. We get confused on what true love feels like, and not the Disney version of love either, although that is beautiful in its own way. And so when we don't know what that feels like, we'll take any form of it. Pure love is exactly what you see when someone, for example, gets married and then their partner gets cancer. Because when they stay anyway, they truly love them. But when they leave, when they get diagnosed, that's not true love. This is especially true with self-love. When she goes in to talk with No Face, it's symbolic of how someone could consume food, money, or people, not like Jeffrey Dahmer or anything, but more around the lines of relationship after relationship, or even just booty call after booty call. And it still wouldn't be enough to fill the void in their souls, because that is what needs attention the most. Not partner after partner, not food, not money, just love and care for yourself. Enough to heal what is hurt inside. No amount of consumption is ever going to fill the part of your soul that needs healing the most. That also reminds me of codependent relationships, especially one of my own that I'm not proud of, but that I've learned from. I'm not saying I was like No Face, but I'm just saying that I can see where it could have gone to, where people in those kind of relationships depend on their partner for everything when it comes to feeling fulfilled and being happy. It's not always in a romantic sense either. It's also something that can be in platonic relationships and families. But with that scene, the part where she still doesn't take what they're asking her to take, and then the baby in the mouse form bites No Face's finger, just being yourself is enough for people to start being brave, even if it's just little by little, and how No Face tried to basically squish the mouse. When you don't care about anything else except you, then you're not caring about the earth, and you'll just kill indiscriminately when it comes to something like pests or whatever. I'm not saying that you're just completely heartless. I'm just saying that's an example of a physical, mental manifestation of where you're at spiritually, is if you just decide, oh, well, these pests aren't worth anything, so I'm just going to kill it. That's why they say in spiritual communities that you want to try to not kill bugs if you can help it. You should just try to relocate them instead, because it's the right thing to do. For one, you're sentient. You know that they're just looking for shelter or food. You know what it's like to survive. So you know that killing them wouldn't do anything. whereas No Face has zero idea about the nuances of that. They just see the immediate problem and say, I don't like that, get it away from me. I don't like that because I don't understand, basically. And you can see it in his face. He kind of looks at it for a second and then decides, bam, I'm gonna smack it. Then when she gives the rest of the river spirit's medicine to No Face, he just starts puking up all of the sludge in them and basically making them pure again, or at least not twisted like they were in that scene, having consumed so much. And wherever he goes, that residue sticks to things. That can be a spiritual thing as well, because when you're around toxic people with toxic energy, that can rub off on you if you hang around them too much, because you are who you hang around. So when No Face starts going after her and they can't catch up to her, it's symbolic of acknowledging that when you're high enough up in experience spiritually, you know how to avoid that kind of behavior or those kind of people or situations with those people. So it doesn't affect you as much as it used to, because the old her would have freaked the hell out and would have refused to even go in the same room with him had she not grown spiritually. The next part, after meeting up with Lin and Lin paddles over to the train tracks for her to get to Zeniba's house, she apologizes to Chihiro for calling her a dope. It symbolizes people coming back to apologize when you start knowing your worth. People start feeling that you've changed without you needing to say anything. So when the train gets up to the station, it goes by No Face and pushes them with waves of water. When we aren't acting with the best intentions, things can pass us by. Opportunities can pass us by because we have actively chosen not to grow and heal, whereas Chihiro has. During this train ride, the train takes them to these different stations while they wait for their stop. It's that transitional phase where you know something is coming and that you're going to your destination, but you have to wait for it to show up in the physical. She's grown so much during the whole film that being on this train is the reward. The joy is in the journey. That's the phase that I've been in for almost a month now, but I can feel that it's going to be arriving soon. I don't know how it will manifest, but I know that it's coming and I'm enjoying how I'm getting there. Then when they cut the scene with the train to go back to Haku, he wakes up and asks what's going on and where Chihiro is. Kamaji tells him that pure love broke the spell and Chihiro saved him. Kamaji also tells Haku that she went to return the seal. It's like finding out in hindsight how someone helped you in your life and you couldn't see it before until they were gone. Then when Haku visits Yubaba before leaving to find Chihiro and tells her that something precious is missing, she freaks out and goes searching for her baby in the playroom and finds that he's not there, and all of the gold that she thought was valuable, apparently more valuable than keeping an eye on her own son, turns to dirt. And it's just another reminder that money is material and that nothing is permanent because money is of this world. Nothing is more important than the people you love. It's kind of funny because after freaking out, she gets angry. She starts turning into this fiery dragon herself, with fire coming out from her mouth, but then she gets the answer from Haku about where her baby is, which is with her twin sister, Zeniba. She appears burnt out. Her hair is going everywhere, smoke is coming out of her mouth, and she goes to sit down because a lot of the time, the truth can make us feel like, what the fuck? Why didn't I know that before?
Language!
The other thing that this represents is that sometimes the ego can definitely feel powerful, but it's never going to be more powerful than the divine. What's interesting is that after sitting down, Yubaba asks Haku what he wants, and he instantly thinks only of Chihiro. That's pure love reciprocated. The condition that comes from Yubaba is basically the final threshold that you have to pass through in order to obtain true abundance. That final test of fear, priorities, discernment, and ultimately of self-worth. When they cut back to Chihiro and the gang walking together after getting to the last train station, the mouse, aka the baby, sees that the crow is tired from trying to fly with him all the time and decides, you know what, I'm gonna walk. Then when Chihiro offers to put him on her shoulder, he looks away as if saying, nope, I'm not doing that, I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna do my own work, thank you. Once again, once someone learns enough from you or from observing you be yourself, it gives them enough to go off of and start doing the work themselves and finding their own self-worth and the value of both themselves and the work that needs to be done. The opposite is also true. When you coddle someone so much that they just start taking your energy from you, that's what's known as an energy vampire. While it's not an actual vampire, it can actually feel like it because you're sitting there taking care of somebody else and their problems that they refuse to fix. The effort of trying to care for someone who constantly complains or degrades you or gaslights you into thinking their problems are your problems and that you're not doing enough to fix it for them is the problem itself rolled into one. It sort of reminds me of the scene from Avatar where Neytiri tells Jake to go back and that he's like a baby, don't know what to do. It's not that people like this are doing it on purpose, usually, But when someone is like that, it can feel like taking care of a baby because you see how to fix it, but they end up blaming some external person or circumstance. They blame everyone but themselves, which can lead to narcissism, in my opinion. I think that's truly where the legend of vampires came from, that someone met a person so cruel and draining that they created a whole creature from that experience. They alchemized it. Granted, I know it was based on a real person called Vlad the Impaler of Wallachia, but I think that just proves my point. Now, back to the story. The lamp that hops over to Chihiro and the gang in the night is symbolic of finding happiness in your own light. At least that's how I see it. Imagine if that lamp was a person. You could probably see in your mind's eye that this person is so bubbly and patient, waiting for them to catch up before moving forward a little bit more so they can see where they're going and hopping along while they do it. That's how we all should be. We should all be happy to be alive and open to meeting new people and helping them out if we can. Speaking of which, one thing that ties in with that is Yubaba and Zeniba themselves. They are twins, but one represents the negative aspects of greed, anger, and control, among other things, and one represents the positive aspects of patience, kindness, guidance, and many others. Zeniba's house is humble, whereas Yubaba is living in a bathhouse and it's extravagant and beautiful, but it's more than what she needs. Zeniba lives with what she has and doesn't take more than what she needs. She shares her food and her space with people that come all the way out to see her. She gives advice and helps Chihiro and the gang in different ways that they all need. The difference can be seen with No Face. At Yubaba's bathhouse, you can see that they can't help themselves there and they go crazy, as Chihiro put it in a previous scene. But when No Face is at Zeniba's, they control themselves around food and only take what they need, never demanding more. Granted, I know that I would personally like to have Zeniba's way of living, but that doesn't mean that we can't get nice things. But for instance, let's say you already have a nice working car, but you want a different one because it's a sports car versus what you have now. That's totally fine, but when you start collecting cars or not limiting what you consume, then that's where it starts to kind of go back in progress. At least that's how I see it, because for me, that's what I would do. I would get rid of my car that I have now and get something else, just because at that point I would have the money to make a slightly bigger payment every month. At least that's the goal, is to live in abundance and only take what I need. The temptation would always be there, just like No Face has been during the whole movie, but it would be a constant balancing act of making sure that I never dip to one side or the other on the spectrum of progress. When I do, I need to work to correct it because no one, including myself, is perfect. Back to the scene where Chihiro is eating with everyone at the table in Zeniba's house, she explains to Zeniba that she squashed the slug, saving Haku from it and the seal. She didn't realize that she also freed him from Yubaba because the slug was allowing Yubaba to control him. Like I mentioned before, that slug was a parasitic attachment, so she was using his limiting beliefs and negative aspects about himself against him. It allowed her to control him and make that parasite bore into him, creating holes in his spirit, slowly destroying his progress, and he had to fight every moment to make sure that he didn't slip too far down, which is how he's been able to help Chihiro throughout the movie. That constant perseverance and will to keep moving forward despite everything. It just confirms the fact that only love is what we really need to worry about in life. Everything else falls into place after that. Imagine if everyone was able to find the courage to be themselves in this world, and how much brighter the world could be. Maybe even literally brighter. The Earth would have less issues with the environment, ecosystems could thrive, and we'd have less of a footprint, and the cycle of that would feed itself just like it is now, but in the negative aspect of it all. The fact that the spells on the baby and the tiny bird have already worn off and they choose to stay in those forms shows that the very thing I've talked about in all of my videos, that by working on yourself and having the right people around you inspires others to do the same if they are ready for it. It also shows that people would rather be vulnerable without any sort of outside influence if they can help it. It has to be their choice to be both vulnerable and brave to make any changes for themselves. You can't force someone to heal, which is where this channel comes in. It's meant to show you that what I'm doing here with stories and with interests in movies and art, you can do it too. It might not look like how I'm doing it, but that's okay. As long as it's your passion and that you do what you can to make your contributions to the world in those ways. Then when Zeniba talks about her sister, it's like she acknowledges in a roundabout way that duality of life. How they're twin sisters, but they're exact opposites of each other. She admits, though, that because of that, she can't do anything about her parents and repeats what Haku told her, that she needs to remember who her parents are on her own. Her advice on how to help her parents is to use what she remembers about them in order to save them. That's seeing the potential in them. That's seeing who they are despite the mask they pretend to wear. Because when you can see and fully read people, you can see who they could become and who they are now, where they're at in their spiritual journey at that moment. But again, you can only see so far. You can't see the obstacles that were or are in their way, and you can't fix it for them. But you can give them guidance. You can hold space for them and help them as needed. It's like being a medic in a war zone. You have to be there when they need you and stop the bleeding, but you have to know how to heal that specific wound. You can't treat each wound the same. Some are deeper and some are less life-threatening, but all are wounds and all need healing in some form or another. You learn how to fix all wound types when you work on yourself. That way you can jump to help others because you know how to fix that wound you see in them because you experienced it yourself. And because you've experienced those wounds, when someone sees you heal and sees what you do afterward, it inspires others to do the same. So when it cuts from that scene from eating at the table and then the mouse and the tiny bird running on the spinning wheel while they wait for Chihiro to remember her parents, the spinning wheel has symbolism, especially with what I just talked about. When I searched specifically only for the spinning wheel symbolism in spirituality, it said it represents cycles, spiritual growth, and interconnectedness of life, where it can be a cyclical journey of birth and rebirth. So as I said before, when you heal yourself, you heal others just by being you. You encourage others to have their own deaths and rebirths. You push their wheels into motion. You inspire people. I've said this in other videos, but another video game that I really enjoy is called Destiny. Some of you may have heard of it or even played it yourself. Despite what you may think about the game itself, the symbolism of the ghosts bringing back their guardians over and over again is like what I just talked about. It's the cycles of renewal within yourself as you grow. You die over and over again inside as you grow and rebirth into life again when you learn these lessons and download this data from the stories you love. A lot of the time, those stories that you love the most have something to say or that they want to teach you. A lot of the time, as you grow, your interests change, and when your new favorite story comes up, the cycle repeats. You dissect the story for its lessons and go from there, over and over and over again until you get to where you want to go. Now, when Chihiro gets the hair tie that her friends put together with Zeniba, that's a symbolism in itself. That's when we're connected to people in deeper ways. It just strengthens us and it will help us get through anything. The more we band together on the individual level, the more we understand each other. And the more we understand each other, the less likely we are to fall back into old habits. Imagine that on a large scale. Imagine what we could do as a country or as a people on Earth. Imagine how much more beautiful this world could become, how strong we could be, how much stronger than anyone else has ever known before. But it will take time. It takes one lifetime after a lifetime in order to learn these lessons sometimes. It takes generations upon generations in order for it to start making a difference in the physical. But it is 100% worth the effort every single time. Later, when Haku finally makes it to Zeniba's house, it's symbolic of embracing your path in life because you finally found yourself, and when you find your true self, you find love in all its forms. You become a magnet for good and bad things, but your discernment and intuition at that point would be so strong that the odds of something slipping from you like that would be minimal. Nothing is stronger than the divine, as I said before. When Haku remembers who he is after that, it just made me tear up again because it's like finally feeling happy and fulfilled, and I think a lot of people are missing that right now. People are wanting that feeling of joy and hope, and it's just in short supply right now. It'll take work to get back to where we should be, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen eventually. Now, the deal at the end with Yubaba where she has to find which pigs are her parents, she agrees with Yubaba that even though others were fighting basically to have her not need to go through it, she knows it needs to be done. Again, it's a test that needs to be passed. Just because it gets easy doesn't mean that you stop putting in the work. If you stop putting in the work, you start to stagnate and you lose progress. Don't let it get to that point again because you already learned those lessons. You don't need a refresher course. So with the last test in this scene, it's symbolic for knowing when nothing is the right answer, when doing nothing or choosing none of the options is the answer. But that doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means that you've reached a point that starts a new journey, a new story where you don't have the answers yet to the next challenge. That's why she senses that neither of her parents are in the set of pigs that Yubaba provided. I feel like that's where I'm at right now too, because I have this internal knowing that is so strong that something is going to happen with this video, or in this case set of videos, that I don't even know how to explain. It's just such a strong internal knowing that I don't have to do anything else except what I love, because everything else is going to come in for me in divine timing. I know that sounds crazy to those who might not understand everything that I'm saying right now, but as long as you've made it to this point, you've opened the first door on your own journey by staying and listening to these videos. Just that step is enough. But it's up to you to continue so that you can also feel what I'm feeling and chase your own dreams. Just follow your interests, especially when it comes to media like music or movies or books, and dissect them until you can't anymore. And it will start to lead you to things you had no idea you needed to know. Moving along again through the story at the end where she finally frees her parents and she starts going back, she seems to know that not a lot of time has passed. That's what happens with time when we're on a spiritual journey, because what feels like a month could in reality only have been a few days, because you've constantly focused on one problem and taking care of it. I know that during this spiritual journey of mine, there's been times where I was focusing on a problem and it felt like 2 weeks had passed, when in reality only a handful of days has passed. When you're constantly focused on self-improvement in the mundane and the spiritual, you do so much work during that time. That's how you quantum leap. You're basically taking a wormhole from one point in your life to the other, a shortcut or a fast travel like in a video game, to the next point, the next task, the next life lesson, the next improvement. That's not to say it's an endless quest line, because there will always be rewards along the way. Rewards that are far more precious than you can imagine. Seeing yourself in all of the little ways you've changed and how much your life has improved because of those changes. How much you allowed your inner child to be free and feel safe enough to come out and express themselves through you. When you put in the work, it's like the cloud in the sky I saw the other day before recording this. I took a picture of it, and it might not look like this to other people, but it looked like a bow and arrow, and how it's almost like it was being pulled back. I'm in the pre-launch phase, because when we do the work, it feels like we're going backwards, but we aren't. You're just integrating those lessons and allowing those things to come to the surface of your mind so that they can be addressed. Once they have been addressed, those 2 steps backward allow you to take 3 steps forward every time. And once you do that and the bow is taut enough, the momentum that you've created with your progress allows the arrow to finally fly and hit your target with precision. At the end of the movie, the tunnel that they go back out of shows that some time has passed, like I mentioned before. It's showing the changes and the time that has passed between progress points. When you see how far you've grown and what you've been through, nothing can get past you after that. You see the real lessons and the real benefits and drawbacks in life. You're not perfect, but it's just that. The imperfections of life are what allow you to become balanced and happy. Finding that balance within you allows you to live your best life. Okay, so that was part 2 to the Spirited Away analysis. I again hope that this has helped somebody out there and maybe even awakened something inside them, as far as a spark of inspiration to improve one's life or what have you, whatever it is that this helped with. I genuinely hope that it will push you forward in good ways. But with that being said, it was a very fun experience to break this entire movie down, because I seriously took like a whole day to break down every scene, because there was a chunk where Spirit didn't want me to talk about it, because there was a part where I know I wrote it down somewhere, but it just disappeared. I have no idea where it went, and I save everything in my Dropbox, so maybe that was the issue. So who knows? But with that being said, everything that I talked about in these videos is important to real life, in my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt if you're not sure. Take these videos and analyze it, or maybe even watch the movie yourself and analyze it yourself, because who knows, maybe you'll pull something out of it that I didn't, especially if it's one of your favorite movies, because a lot of the times our interests tell us about ourselves in ways that we probably don't even really recognize at first. Like I said in the video, they are just markers of where you can start. So yeah, with that being said, keep your minds and your hearts open. Peace.